Welcome to the introduction to theme. I am going to ask that you not grab your notes just yet. I want you to be in this lesson with me, to be listening. I want you to be thinking. I want you to be paying attention to the conversation that I'm having and the thinking and thought process. You will also find that there's going to be questions throughout this, so be prepared to answer those questions. But the goal today is to teach you what we already know about the character to help us define the theme of the story. A theme is a big idea or a message or a lesson that we can learn from a story. It is not specific to a certain story, but it can be applied to our own lives each and every day. For example, one of the common themes that you'll see is honesty is the best policy. Now, we know that in our own life. And as a character in a story would learn the same thing. We can also use it in other stories. So when we're looking for the theme, we're looking for what does the story mean? What's the author trying to get us to think about the topic that they're telling? And is it a life lesson? So these are kind of some things that we're going to talk about. I also want you to notice that on the top of this page, you see some common themes there. These are not the end of the list. This is just a piece of the list. There's so many different life lessons that we learn from stories. These just happen to be the most common ones. I am going to introduce you to a new tall tale. And before I start reading this story, Thunder Rose, I want to explain to you that tall tales are type of traditional tales that are strongly associated with the American frontier. The author includes humor, impossible events, and characters with superhuman powers. And that's kind of what this story is. So, as I mentioned before, you're going to see questions pop up throughout the reading because I want to make sure that you're paying attention. So, I'm going to start reading the first 8 paragraphs. I hope you have your listening ears on because this is a good one. Thunder Rose. Rose was the first child born free and easy to Jackson and Millicent McCruder. I recall most vividly the night she came into this world. Hailing rain, flashing lightning, and booming thunder pounded the door, inviting themselves in for the blessed event. Taking in her first breath of life, the infant did not cry out. Rather, she sat up and looked around. She took hold of the lightning, rolled it into a ball, and set it above her shoulder, while the thunder echoed over the other. They say this just accentuated the fact that the child had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins. She's going to grow up to be good and strong, all right, Doc Holliday said. The child turned to the good doctor with a thoughtful glance and replied, I reckon I will want to do more than that, thank you very kindly. Shifting her gaze to the 2 loving lights shining on her, which were her ma and pa, she remarked, Much obliged to you both for this chance to make my way in the world. Then she announced to no one in particular, I am right partial to the name Rose. So much in love with this gift of their lives, her ma and pa hovered over her in watchful splendor. Overcome with that love, they lifted their voices in song. An old song and a melody so sweet and true, a lullaby passed down from the ages, echoing since the beginning of time. There is music ringing so sweetly in my ears, the newborn exclaimed. It's giving me a fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me. I'll register it here at the bull's eye set in the center of my heart and see what I can do with it one day. Rose Rose snored up plenty that night, breathing on her own, rattling the rafters on the roof right along with the booming thunder. There was nothing quiet about her slumber. She seemed determined to be just as forceful as the storm. With the thunder and lightning keeping watch over her the rest of the night, her ma and pa just took to calling her Thunder Rose. Now, I see that she was feeling fortunate to hear the sweet music, and later, she was determined to be forceful like storms. These topics could be appreciation and determination. The next morning, when the sun was high yellow in the billowy blue sky, Rose woke up hungry as a bear in spring, but not the least bit ornery. Minding her manners, she politely thanked her ma for the milk, but it was not enough to quench her hungry thirst. Rose preferred instead to drink her milk straight from the cow. Her ma was right grateful to have such a resourceful child. No other newborn had the utter strength to lift a whole cow clear over her head and almost drink it dry. In a moment's time, Rose did, and quite daintily so. She was as pretty as a picture and the sweetest disposition, but don't let yourself be misled. That child was full of lightning and thunder. Out on that paper bag, brown, dusty, dry, wide open space, Rose often was found humming a sweet little tune as she did her chores. And true to her word, Rose did more than grow good and strong. The 2 year old became quite curious about the pile of scrap iron laying next to the barn. Rose took a good sized piece, stretched it here, bent and twisted it there. She constructed a thunderbolt as black as pitch to punctuate her name. She called it Cole. Wherever she went, Cole was always by her side. Noticing how skilled Rose was with the metal, her paw made sure there was an extra supply of it always around. At the age of 5, Rose did a commendable job of staking the fence without a bit of help. During her 8th and ninth years, Rose assembled some iron beams together with the wood blocks she used to play with and constructed a building tall enough to scrape the sky, always humming as she worked. By the time she turned 12, Rose had perfected her metal bending practices. She formed delicately shaped alphabet letters to help the young ones learn to read. For his birthday, Rose presented her paw with a branding iron, a circle with a big MAC for Mac Cruder in the middle, just in time, too, because a herd of quick tempered longhorn steer was stamping its way up the Rio Grande. They were plowing a path straight towards her front door. Now, as I read these paragraphs, I think this shows a lot of examples of Rose doing some really tough jobs on her own. So, when we do hard things on our own, what do we kind of call that? Doing hard things by ourselves. You're right, it's called independence. So maybe this is about independence? I don't know. Let's see. We'll keep reading and find out. Rose performed an eye catching wonder, the likes of which was something to see. Running lightning fast towards the herd, using Cole for support, Rose vaulted into the air and landed on the back of the biggest lead steer like he was a merry-go-round pony. Grabbing a horn in each hand, Rose twisted that varmint to a complete halt. It was just enough to restrain that top bull and the rest of the herd. But I believe what touched that critter's heart was when Rose began humming her little tune. That cantankerous ton of beef was restless no more. He became as playful as a kitten and even tried to purr. Rose named him Tater on account of that was his favorite vegetable. Hearing Rose's lullaby put that considerable creature to sleep was the sweetest thing I had witnessed in a long, long time. After the dust had settled, Ma and Pa counted 2,700 head of cattle after they added in the 500 they already had. Using the scrap iron, Rose had to add a new section to the bullpen to hold them all. What did you do to the wire, Rose? Ma asked, surprised and pleased at her daughter's latest creation. Oh, that, she said. While I was staking the fence, Paul asked me to keep little Barbara J company. That was right clever of you to be so entertaining to the little one like that, her ma said. Rose just blushed. Over the years, that twisted wire caught on, and folks just called it barbed wire. Rose and her pa spent the whole next day sorting the animals that had been branded. One day soon, before the cold weather gets in, she told her pa, I'll have to get this herd up the Chisholm Trail and to the market in Abilene. I suspect Tater is the right kind of horse for the long drive northward. On Rose's first trip to Abilene, while right outside of Caldwell, that irascible, full of outrage and eerie outlaw, Jesse Baines, and his gang of desperados tried to wrestle that herd away from Rose. Using the spare metal rod she always carried with her, Rose lassoed those hot-tempered hooligans up good and tight. She dropped them all off to jail, tied up in a nice, neat iron bow. It wasn't really any trouble at all, she told Sheriff Weaver. Somebody had to put a stop to their thieving ways. But that wasn't the only thieving going on. The mighty sun was draining the moisture out of every living thing it touched. Even the rocks were crying out. Those clouds stood by and watched it all happen. They weren't even trying to be playful. So, I'm listening to this part of the story, and I see that there's independence again. She took it upon herself. She created barbed wire. She gathered up those hot-tempered hooligans and put a stop to their thieving ways. So, sounds like she's still a pretty independent person. Might be a theme going on here. Let's check out the next page. Why, the air had turned so dry and sour, time seemed to all but stand still, and there was not a drop of water in sight. Steer will not move without water, and that was making those bulls mad, real mad. When a bull gets angry, it's like a disease that's catching, making the rest of the herd mad too. Tater was looking parched and mighty thirsty. I have got to do something about this, Rose declared, stretching out several iron rods lasso fashion, then launching Cole right in the air. Rose hoped she could get the heavens to yield forth. She caught a hold of a mass of clouds and squeezed them hard, real hard, all the while humming her song. Gentle rain began to fall, but anyone looking could see there was not enough moisture to refresh two ants, let alone a herd of wild cows. Suddenly, a rotating column of air came whirling and swirling around, picking up everything in its path. It sneaked up on Rose. Whoa there! Now just hold on a minute, Rose called out to the storm. Tater was helpless to do anything about that sort of wind. Those meddlesome clouds caused it. They didn't take kindly to someone telling them what to do, and they were set on creating a righteous rampage all on their own. Oh, this riled Rose so much. She became the only two-legged temptress to walk the western plains. You don't know who you're fooling with, Rose called to the storm. Her eyes flashed lightning. She bit down and gnashed thunder from her teeth. I don't know why anyone would want to mess with the pretty young woman who had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins, but pity for them, the old clouds did. Rose reached for her iron rod, but there was only one piece left. She did not know which way to turn. She knew coal alone was not enough to do the job right. Unarmed against her own growing thirst and the might of the elements, Rose felt weighted down. Then the churning column split, and now there were two. They were coming at her from opposite directions. Rose had some fast thinking to do. Never being one to bow down under pressure, she considered her options, for she was not sure how this would all come out in the end. Well, wasn't that exciting? But I'm going to say she wasn't real sure how to defeat the storm, but it also says never one to bow down under pressure. If she's not willing to bow down under pressure, that makes me think that maybe she's not willing to give up. And someone who's not willing to give up, well, they have what we like to call determination. So I think this page is kind of about determination. Let's see what the next page has. Is this the fork in the road which I have my final supper? Will this be my first and last ride of the roundup? She queried herself from the depths of her heart. Her contemplations brought her little relief as she witnessed the merciless, the cataclysmic efforts of the windstorm bent on her disaster. Then the winds joined hands and cranked and churned a path heading straight towards her. Calmly, Rose spoke out loud in the storm as she stood alone to face the rack and ruin, the multiplying devastation. I could ride at least one of you out to the end of time, But I've got this fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me, and I see what I am to do with it this day, Rose said, smiling. The winds belted at a rumbling pitch. Rose squarely faced that storm. Come and join me, winds. She opened her arms as if to embrace the torrent. She opened her mouth as if she were planning to take a good long drink. But from deep inside her, she heard a melody so real and sweet and true. And when she lifted her heart, she unleashed her song of thunder. It was a sight to see. Rose, making thunder and lightning rise and fall to the ground at her command. At the sound of her song, oh, how her voice rang out so clear and real and true. It rang from the mountain tops, it filled up the valleys, it flowed like the healing river in the breathing air around her. Those tornadoes calmed her song, stopped the churning masses, and raged no more. And gentle as a baby's bath, a soft drenching and soaking, rain fell. And Rose realized that by reaching into her own heart to bring forth the music that was there, she had even touched the hearts of the clouds. The stories of Rose's amazing abilities spread like wildfire far and wide. And as sure as thunder follows lightning, as sun follows rain, wherever you see a spark of light flash across the heavy, still gray sky, listen to the sound of the thunder and think of Thunder Rose and her song. The mighty, mighty song pressing on the bull's eye that was set at the center of her heart. Wow, that's an ending to a story. But if you notice, she uses the music in her own heart to defeat the storm on her own. That topic could be talent because Rose definitely had talent. What an exciting story. I want you to notice that we are going to analyze Thunder Rose by looking at what did the character learn? How did they grow or change? How did they act and why did they act this way? And what was the author trying to tell us about this topic? Because it all flows. In the beginning, I said that we were going to be using our analytical skills about the character to infer what the theme is. But I'm going to tell you that there are multiple themes throughout this story. The idea is that we find one based on the character, but understanding that if we find a theme from this story, can that theme then be pulled and put in another story? Can it be placed in our own personal lives? So I want to show you what it looks like to go through this process first, and then I'm going to have you grab your notes, and you and your group are going to do it together using a different story. Let me walk through this process first, okay? So the first thing I want to look at is, what did the character learn? What did Rose learn? Well, let's take a look. I think if I go back and I were to pay attention to this story, one of the things that we noticed is that she was independent and nothing held her back, right? But keep in mind, someone who is independent and strong willed, there are definitely other ways that we could say this. We're going to think about some synonyms. So think about what you think, but don't forget the synonyms as well. So you remember I just said that I felt like she was independent and strong-willed. Well, some synonyms to that is maybe she has self-confidence and she is overcoming some challenges. She was faced with a few challenges along the way. If you paid attention to the herd of bulls coming in and she stopped them. As she was going down the Chisholm Trail, taking the bulls to Abilene, she stopped those rowdy, thieving people. Then she faced a storm and she managed to stop the storm. So she was very confident in her abilities and she overcame those challenges. Here's some evidence that we can pull from the passage. And remember, that's kind of what we do is we find our answers in the stories. So I noted paragraph 2 where she sat up and looked around. And remember, this was right after she was born. She took hold of the lightning, rolled it into a ball, and set it above her shoulders while the thunder echoed over the other. I mean, that's pretty confident you got some power there. And then later on, she says, I reckon I will want to do more than that. Thank you very kindly. So she was telling her parents that she wanted to do more. So she was very confident that she was going to do more. And she had no problem ever overcoming some challenges. The next question is, how did the character grow and change? And I already have it written down here. But if you think about from the beginning to the end, does she sound like someone that you would want to learn things from? And if she is, then we kind of consider that a leader. I mean, if we were to put ourselves in this tall tale about Thunder Rose, would you look at someone with her confidence and her ability to overcome things and think, you know what? I want to be that confident. I want to be able to overcome challenges. Well, if you're saying to yourself that you can look at her and think that you want to be similar to her, then that she's got leadership qualities. And one of the ways that we can prove it in the story is when it says that she faced the stampede of cattle. She used her lasso. So she created this lasso and brought in the outlaws. And by no means was she afraid to take charge of any chaotic situation. So that to me tells me that she's got some great leadership skills. The next piece on our page we're going to see is, how did the character act and why did they act this way? Well, when I think about the story, I think about all the amazing things that she did. And again, I keep going back to self-confident and overcoming challenges. I mean, every time she was faced with a situation, she didn't cower down to the danger. She stood up to it. You know, that stampede of bulls coming at her, she decided that she was going to stand there and get on the lead bull and stopped that lead bull. And then she saw those outlaws constantly taking things and she got fed up with it. So she handled it. She gathered them up and took them to jail. And then the last one, she stood up to the storms. She calmed the storms. I mean, this is a girl who she's brave enough to stand up to these challenges and push forth to succeed. I think, you know, the way that she acts is phenomenal. And that's what she did. She acted in a brave, bold, and confident way. And I want to make a point that when she did all this, none of it was for selfish reasons. She didn't stop the bull necessarily for herself. She stopped the bull for her family. You know, that stampede was going straight for her paw in their house. And then she stopped the outlaws because the outlaws were taking things that didn't belong to them. I mean, they weren't necessarily taking her stuff, they were taking others, and she stopped it. And then the storms, I mean, those storms can cause destruction in its path. So it wasn't just her that was going to be affected. It was anybody in that storm's path. So not only is she brave and bold and confident, but she's selfless. She does it for the good of all, not just for herself. In the last piece of analyzing this, remember we pulled the pieces of the character. What did the character learn? She learned self-confidence and overcoming challenges. How did the character grow? Well, through her experiences, she grew in her leadership. And then how did she act? Well, she was brave and confident. Pulling all of this together, what is the author trying to tell us in the story? Why is this story so important? And I know that on the paper that I have, it's not even a paper in front of you, but on the screen in front of you, the example, it has that she's brave, bold, confident, and she's a leader. But I kind of feel like this theme is never give up. When you're faced with challenges, push forth those challenges and go tackle whatever it is that you need to accomplish. And I like how at the end, she thought it was a little bit more than she could handle, but she calmly handled it. So I kind of feel like if I pull together the brave, the bold, the confident, and the leader, that maybe there's a little bit more that those fit under. And that is, when things get tough, she got tougher. So I think that overall, the author is trying to tell us that bold, bravery, confidence, and effective leadership are all interconnected qualities to empower people to navigate challenges in life. And Thunder Rose, if you listen to her story, she's quite inspirational. So you can pull inspiration from her story and know that whatever is put in front of you and whatever challenges you are faced, you can calmly face those challenges and succeed. So I think this story is about overcoming those challenges. Now it is your turn. Go ahead and grab the theme notes. You are going to listen to the story Fox, and you are going to work with your table group to analyze the character and see if you guys can come up with a common theme. So, we are still sticking with the story Fox because I think it is good to be consistent as we are learning new things. And since it's a traditional literature, kind of fits our pattern here. So I'm going to read the story Fox by Margaret Wilde and Ron Brooks. While I'm reading, I would like for you to be kind of making some notes about the character. And if you and your table group want to pause along the way and discuss the pieces as you go, that works well too. If you decide that you want to listen to the story in its entirety first, and then you guys can go back and discuss the pieces, that's good too. But remember, the things that you are looking for, you're going to want to make sure that you have evidence from the story. It doesn't necessarily have to be quoted, but you do have to be able to find it in the passage. So, are y'all ready to hear about the story Fox? Well, here we go. Fox by Margaret Wilde and Ron Brooks. Through the charred forest over hot ash runs Dog. With the bird clamped in his big, gentle mouth, he takes her to his cave above the river, and there he tries to tend her burnt wing. But Magpie does not want his help. I will never again be able to fly, she whispers. I know, says Dog. He is silent for a moment, and then he says, I am blind in one eye, but life is still good. An eye is nothing, says Magpie. How would you feel if you couldn't run? Dog does not answer. Magpie drags her body into the shadow of the rocks until she feels herself melting into blackness. Days, perhaps a week later, she wakes with a rush of grief. Dog is waiting. He persuades her to go with him to the river bank. Hop on my back, he says. Look into the water and tell me what you see. Sighing, Magpie does as he asked. Reflected in the water are clouds and sky and trees and something else. I see a strange new creature, she says. That's us, says Dog. Now, hold on tight. With Magpie clinging to his back, he races through the scrub, past the stringy barks, past the clumps of yellow box trees, and into blueness. He runs so swiftly it is almost as if he were flying. Magpie feels the wind streaming through her feathers, and she rejoices. Fly, Dog, fly! I will be your missing eye, and you will be my wings. And so Dog runs with Magpie on his pack every day through summer and through winter. After the rains, when saplings are springing up everywhere, a fox comes into the bush. Fox, with his haunted eyes and rich red coat, he flickers through the trees like a tongue on fire, and Magpie trembles. But Dog says, Welcome. We can offer you food and shelter. Thank you, says Fox. I saw you running this morning. You looked extraordinary. Dog beams, but Magpie shrinks away. She can feel Fox staring at her burnt wing. In the evenings, when the air is creamy with blossom, Dog and Magpie relax at the mouth of the cave, enjoying each other's company. Now and again, Fox joins in the conversation, but Magpie can feel him watching, always watching her. And at night, his smell seems to fill the cave, a smell of rage and envy and loneliness. Magpie tries to warn Dog about Fox. He belongs nowhere, she says. He loves no one. But Dog says he's all right. Let him be. That night, when Dog is asleep, Fox whispers to Magpie, I can run faster than Dog, faster than the wind. Leave Dog and come with me. Magpie says, I will never leave Dog. I am his missing eye, and he is my wings. Fox says no more that night, but the next day when Dog is at the river, he whispers to Magpie, do you remember what it was like to fly? Truly fly? And again, Magpie says, I will never leave Dog. I am his missing eye, and he is my wing. But later that day, as Dog runs through the scrub with Magpie on his back, she thinks, this is nothing like flying. Nothing. And when at dawn Fox whispers to her for the third time, she whispers back, I am ready. When Dog sleeps, Magpie and Fox streak past coolabah trees, rip through long grass, pelt over rocks. Fox runs so fast that his feet scarcely touch the ground, and Magpie exults. At last, I am flying, really flying. Fox scorches through the woodlands, through dusty plains, through salt pans, and out into the red hot desert. He stops, scarcely panting. There is silence between them. Neither moves, neither speaks. Then Fox shakes Magpie off his back as he would a flea and pads away. He turns and looks at Magpie and says, now you and Dog will know what it's like to truly be alone. Then he is gone. In the stillness, Magpie hears a faraway scream. She cannot tell if it's a scream of triumph or of despair. Magpie huddles, a scruff of feathers adrift in heat. She can feel herself burning into nothingness. It would be so easy just to die here in the desert. But then she thinks of Dog waking to find her gone. Slowly, jiggity hop, she begins her long journey home. Working with your table group, I would like to see you have some conversations about these questions and then give your answers. And I know in my example that I gave, there is lengthy sentences and lengthy examples. But if you and your table group want to summarize instead, I do recommend that. You do not have to write a long, elaborate paragraph explaining these four boxes. Like, what did the character learn? And pick one character. I do believe with this story, the character you may want to choose is going to be Magpie because typically the theme follows the main character. So I think Magpie being the main character, well, I think Dog and Magpie are the main characters. So you can pick Dog and you can pick Magpie, either one. But when you give your evidence, it doesn't have to be a whole paragraph. It can be a few words from that line or a few words from that sentence that helps support your idea. Once you and your table group have completed the four squares and had your awesome discussion, go ahead and glue your notes into your assignments journal. And remember, a strip of glue will do, and a page a day. And don't forget to go back to your Module 4 PDSA sheet and list this what is theme page in your table of contents.